Who's ready to win the day in sports? I know you are. Welcome to Fantasy Sports Daily, powered by FantasyGuru.com, Monday through Friday, noon to 1 p.m. Eastern. I'm Justin Fensterman, and let's break everything down from a fantasy sports perspective. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's having a great week, and those on the East Coast right there, cold. Those on the West Coast that are still dealing with all of the fires, specifically in the LA area, thinking about all of you. But let's talk some sports here, because that is what we do Monday through Friday here on Fantasy Sports Daily on the Elite Plus Network, powered by FantasyGuru.com. Ray Flowers hosts Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and your boys got you right in the middle for a little midweek madness. When it comes to sports, make sure you go to FantasyGuru.com and make sure that you are signed up, ready to roll, because there's always a sport that's getting ready to start out. Ray Flowers has his draft guide rolling out. A lot of articles being posted. Ray is a content machine, and he has you covered, getting you ready. Early bird gets the worm. Get ahead of the game by making sure you go into our Discord at FantasyGuru.com, where you can ask Ray all of the baseball questions you can handle. I love, by the way, you can go back because you can get this in podcast form on the site. Go to the Elite Plus tab, you click it, and then you'll see Fantasy Sports Daily. Scroll down a little bit from One Man's Opinion, and you'll be able to make sure you can catch all of our previous episodes, because Ray started with some juice like yesterday. Let me tell you right there. I love when Ray is full of piss and vinegar, because let's face it, in sports, part of the fun is ranting, complaining. I guess in life in general anyway, I'm sure a lot of you are complainers out there, but it's fun, a nice little complaint session, and Ray talking about what's going on with baseball and the Dodgers here. And I'll just say this before I go on to basketball. As someone whose favorite sport has had a salary cap, I think it's very beneficial. These teams make money. Going to sporting events is expensive as hell. And it kind of, I don't want to say ruins the experience, but it does impact the experience, right? It makes you want to sneak snacks in, because everything, the concessions, the tickets, the premiums on the tickets, it's kind of just BS. Let me say this here. You want to know what? Ray started off kind of ranting. I'm going to start off ranting, right? So I was going to the Knicks-Wizards game a few weeks ago, and it's the freaking Wizards. They suck. They've sucked for years. They're not a good team, right? Knicks are in town. It's a hot ticket. I get it. So I debated. I said, look, if I go to one of these sites here, and I'm not even going to name them, and buy, I'm paying probably a nice 50 to 60% markup as well. So maybe what I do is I go to the box office a little bit earlier to get the tickets. And what I get out of that, after doing a little bit of research here, go into the box office. Yes, it's open on the weekends. This was a Saturday game. But at the same time, I'm then seeing print that there could be additional charges game of or day of the game. And I say, screw that noise. Screw that. All right. If I'm willing to take my big butt down to that box office so I can pay and not have to pay up the keister for extra charges and BS charges, because these sites know that they can, because of availability. That's why. It's all about availability. A lot of you probably don't live near these stadiums, so you're not going to take the time out just to drive to the stadiums. No, what you're going to do is you're going to make sure that you have those tickets ready, so that the trip to the stadium becomes the more focus on how you're going to get there, rather than if you're going to get tickets. Totally get it. But if you're willing to drag your butt to the stadium, extra charges just doesn't make it worth it. Just doesn't at all. So baseball, and seeing the Dodgers sign every single player that they want, just kind of crappy there. But other teams, I guess, can do what the Dodgers are doing. Maybe they don't have as much money. There are a lot of lower market teams out there, mid-market teams out there. I totally get it. You've got owners that also won't spend the money. They've got it, but they're being all greedy about it, have it stored away. They don't want to spend that money. And I get that a lot of these teams can't, but I think baseball would definitely benefit from having a salary cap, because why wouldn't teams do this? You're seeing it in NBA, by the way, because we saw a little bit of a trade where the Phoenix Suns acquired some draft picks, and draft picks that are years away. We're talking 2030s at this point. But the reason for that is because down the road, now those are assets. They're existent. They've got their picks. They might as well try to utilize them further. Well, these teams like the Dodgers, when you talk about deferring money, and the Mets did, it kind of blew up in their faces because they're still paying Bobby Bonilla, and they're going to be paying him. I believe it's for another, I think it's 6 years that they're paying him. I think it's 2031, something like that. But they're paying him every year, and it didn't work out. The Dodgers had won the series. Kind of worked out. So I think baseball, and I know there's a lot that goes into it, but I'm just giving my take on that because I thought that Ray started off the show hot and totally understand it. And I totally get it because when it comes to these sports, you're wondering, well, who's going to beat the Dodgers now with all of the talent that they have? Makes it kind of fun. And this was mentioned. Now they're the hunted. So now it's up to all the teams to make the Dodgers look like they've wasted their money. So far, they've been the brains when it comes to how to defer that money. And so with what we're seeing and everything, just stinks. I've always thought that baseball should have a salary cap, just like I thought, and I think that other sports that don't have it, and now we're seeing it more, should have a draft lottery. Takes away from the stupid tanking of sports. Because if you're going to the event, you want to make sure that you see your favorite players play. I digress. That is all I'm going to say about that for now. You can always hit us up. It's a very common sports conversation these days, especially with what the defending World Series champions are doing. So let's set the stage for this show. Going to have Armando Marsal join me in just a little bit to talk about the day of NBA. We've got a split slate between FanDuel and DraftKings, a 7-gamer on DraftKings, 9. That includes the 2 late-night games on FanDuel. So that brings the strategy to a little bit of a fork in the road. How are we going to differentiate? For those that are wondering, as I am on the write-up, we have write-ups with analysis. For those that aren't part of fantasyguru.com, still join, plenty of basketball to go. Because if you sign up for the MVP plan, let me bring it to you right here in case you've not seen the link before. That's where you sign up, brings you to all our plans. You bring us to the MVP plan. There you go there. You sign up for basketball. You get our DFS. You get our betting. I'm putting bets in our betting Discord at Monday through Friday and at least one of the days during the weekend. I don't force bets. I don't. A lot of you probably don't like to hear that, but I don't force bets. I care about our money way too much. And if there's a slate that's not easy to read, well, I'm better off telling you to save that money and then let's bet it another day when we have a cleaner slate. So that's why, and I think that Jeff Mans does a great job. I've done this too. Alt line parlays for those over bettors out there is the way to go. I've said it, the NBA is an under sport. And I actually put my first under bet out on Jalen Duren's rebounds about a week ago, I'd say, and we hit that. And it was interesting, rooting a little bit differently when you're rooting for unders. But these markets, these books, they want you and they're privy to you betting the over. It is more fun to bet the over. We've all said it. We all know it. But it's more fun to win. And that's what we're going to be focusing on at fantasyguru.com. As you can see right here, this is the way to join, fantasyguru.com/join-today. Also, what do we provide in the basketball department? We provide all of the help in our Discord leading right up to lock, except for those late swap players out there. So we're going to be in there building lineups as we are generally an hour to an hour and a half before lineup lock. We're messing with our cores. We're going over the plethora of injury news. And we're giving different strategies in there in both the betting and the DFS NBA Discord. But every single Wednesday, and you can see it on the sheet here, Watch Along Wednesday. It's like office hours. I love doing it because I love talking basketball with all of you. And just saying that, I am very blessed and fortunate to do so. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I love the NBA, and I love talking to passionate people about the NBA. You watch the games. You dip your toe in, okay, that's fine. But you're watching the games there with me in the DFS NBA Discord. Tonight, the slate, I know I have it at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's a little boo-boo on my part. Most Wednesday slates start at 7 p.m. Eastern. Tonight, though, starts at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. So we have a little bit of extra time to build, to get our injury news, and then away we go. Once that slate locks, how it works, I take about 10 minutes to make sure that my wife doesn't hate me or anything like that, because I'm getting to hang with all of you for the night after doing all the work during the day. But that's what we're about here. And she understands that, by the way. And come on, look at me. How annoying am I? You probably want a break from me anyway. So it's almost like watching along Wednesday is a blessing for everyone involved, for you and for her. She gets a break from me. You guys get a piece of me. And I'm just sitting in there reacting in real time. I'm watching these games. I'm thinking things, and I put them in that chat. What I'm thinking at the time. Sometimes you get full team analysis, paragraphs. Sometimes you get quick hitters. I answer questions, contest strategy. I am very into talking about what's not working for all of you. I don't like flexing. I like talking about what's worked. I don't need to say, I've hit these 5 of my last 6 bets. No, let's talk about what's working so you can learn out there. And I mean that. It's about teaching everybody the process. That's why this stream exists. This stream is the bridge that's going to take you right to the Fantasy Guru Castle. And if you're not winning, you're going to start winning, because we're here to help you. And that's what it's all about. That's why Watch Along Wednesday exists, because the NBA is hard as hell. It's hard. It's tough. It's frustrating sometimes when I'm spending 4 hours writing an article only for 3 teams who probably got league approval, because for those that complain about injuries all the time, there are policies the NBA has put in place. But like a lot of other people in life, you all know who you are out there. People like to cut corners. Oh, they've got to beat the system. Yay! Beat the system. Screw over somebody else. Cut corners. If you're one of those people, stop. It impacts other people out there. When you're on a team, in a business, at work, and you try to cut corners and stuff, please. I've worked with certain corner cutters back in the day, back when I was first starting out. It's very easy to tell. Don't be that person. And these NBA teams trying to cut corners, getting players in and out when they please, the Ben Simmons of the world, the Joel Embiids, but a lot of other players need league approval. And when you need league approval, then you're not told, and that's the next piece of this for the NBA. It's not only getting the league approval, but them telling us ahead of time, telling the consumer ahead of time that, hey, the Bucks requested that Giannis Antetokounmpo is going to sit out tonight. We know that 3 days in advance. Great, okay. But they're not going to do that, because why the hell would a fan of the team, if they know Giannis is sitting, spend the money to go? The arena will be half full if they know Giannis, Chris Middleton is sitting. Maybe Giannis, Dame, Chris Middleton is sitting. That's the piece they have to figure out. And they haven't just yet. They haven't. The only things that we know and we can assume, guys like that I mentioned, Joel Embiid, Ben Simmons, they're not going to play in back-to-backs. We just don't know which game. And it stinks, because a guy like Ben Simmons is someone who's a good defender, and it impacts the other side of the matchup too. So for all those that are complaining right there about the injuries, the NBA is slowly but surely figuring it out. But they can't fully cut off access from the teams from those players that are chronically injured. And we all work on that together. Had someone come into Discord, believe it was last night or the night before, trying to help me out, Fensty, trying to figure out DFS NBA. I've been playing for about a week, and I haven't cashed yet. So help me. Okay, well, let me start by telling you, you've got to spend more than a week in there in order to get the NBA lingo. You got to read the articles that are put out there, the cheat sheet that's put out there. Every slate of 4 games or more will have an article and a cheat sheet. Slates that are 3 games, main slates, 3 games or fewer, you'll get a cheat sheet and you'll get help in Discord. That is how we work things at Fantasy Guru. But it could be a 1-gamer showdown, 2, 3, we're in there. We've got people in there to help you. And sometimes it's the way to go with these 2 to 3 gamers. We can focus on those 4K players, and it's easier to focus on them and navigate. But it takes more than a week to get the NBA. It's not the NFL. We all love football. And by the way, I'm thrilled that someone from our football audience at Fantasy Guru wants to dive into basketball, wants to try it out. That's great. But Rome wasn't built in a day. We've got to practice. Things don't always work out. Core plays that I have right now could be completely turned upside down 5 hours from now. That's how we have to do basketball. And then the next day, clean slate. It's not like football where we're building and building and building towards a matchup. And let me tell you, when you have football once a week, the problem is guys that were on the site, because there's so much thought going into each game, centered around each game. Well, those players in DFS become more popular as the weeks go on. Now one of their teammates in the receiving depth is now hurt. Okay, so the ownership is going to go up. So that's where we can have a little bit more of an advantage with the NBA in finding those gems out there. And that's what we're here for. And that's what we do. And by the way, please, thank you very much. I appreciate your compliments right there, favors. But at the same time, let's go. Let's win it. And I'll say this, when it comes to Discord, we are here. And Watch Along Wednesday is a lot of fun. And I just like hanging with you. And I'm not sitting there typing the entire time. Sometimes I sit back. I sit back a little bit and see what you want to talk about. Because this is your session. This is your office hours. And so for everybody out there that hasn't ventured into basketball yet, Wednesdays on this stream, going to be a lot of basketball for a while. So let's start talking about the slate. I want to also bring this up too. You want more? I'm sure you want a lot more. So let me just say this as well. These are some of our tools, are all of our tools at fantasyguru.com. They're updated, and these projections are up there for props, for DFS. The Delta Force tool focuses on that column, focuses on a player's ceiling because of something going on with their team. Maybe they're dealing with a bunch of injuries. The Clippers dealing with a bunch of players out and questionable tonight. So for those playing on FanDuel, we're going to have to figure that out. That's where the Delta tool comes into play. We need that injury information. Most updates automatically for those that like the old school DFS NBA projections and ownership. Well, we've got that too. That one is updated in every couple of days, but the other tools that are above the dotted line update automatically. And we appreciate, by the way, for whenever things happen, because this is why robots haven't taken over our lives just yet. But we appreciate when you guys see something off and our second ears and eyes regarding everything with our site. We really appreciate it very much. So let's talk a little bit about this slate that we've got going on here, because as you see the top totals, that's where I focus on. Maybe you're new to DFS NBA. So the first thing that I do when I get up in the morning, I've been starting the night before to keep the wheels moving a little bit, but then I kind of leave it. I kind of leave it after that, especially if there's a night, unlike tonight, but there are nights where there are a lot of teams that are on back-to-backs. So we have to wait and see what goes on. But when it comes to these games tonight, the games that we're focusing the most on, the Hornets and the Grizzlies, highest total on the board, but also a double-digit spread. Memphis is healthier now. Still missing a couple of ancillary pieces, but they're healthy. And the Hornets, because, they play at a very fast pace, it is going to be tough for the Hornets to keep up with them offensively. It is. And the first player of focus I want to talk about tonight, because when I look at pace, and you don't need to pay for anything like that. You go to NBA.com, you go to the advanced stats. That's where I look. It updates constantly. Sometimes I look in the last month, but this is one of the few things where I don't really set the parameters unless the team is either winning a bunch of games or losing a bunch of games. Then I wonder if maybe they're sacrificing defensively to get more offense and vice versa. Memphis is the fastest moving offense in the league. The fastest, meaning any team that faces the Memphis Grizzlies has what I write about, and I mention this all the time, whether it's in my betting content or DFS, pace. Because I'll say pace produces possessions. Pace, when you're facing a team, when you're a slower moving team, like the Clippers, like the Hornets, who are a bottom 8 team in pace, they've run a notoriously slow pace. And they have for the last couple of years, where 3 years ago, they were fast right off the mark. But here's the thing. I knew that, but I didn't look at pace day to day. So going into last season, I thought, this team's going to be moving quickly. And I went after them in betting early, and it didn't work out. And I'm not saying that pace is the determining factor of matchups, but it tells you a lot about expected game flow for the team. The Hornets have a tremendous pace-up spot because as the 22nd fastest moving offense, they are facing the top moving offense. So now LaMelo Ball is going to be having a lot more possessions than he is used to. And that's very imperative here. What sucks is the double-digit spread. They don't have Brandon Miller, torn wrist. We don't know when we're going to see this guy. They've got a few players that have been helping out. Mark Williams has been such a beast on the offensive end. On the defensive end, though, for a guy that's his size, width-wise, he should be able to cover the whole paint just by his chest alone. But at the same time, he doesn't really, and this is where I come in because I'm a big tapeworm. I'm watching, I'm pausing, his footwork. Dude, Mark, how aren't the Hornets coaches seeing this? Tell him to keep his knees bent. Keep yourself in a squat position like this. You keep yourself in the squat position. No one's going to be able to back you down. They go bowling into you. Offensive foul. It's going the other way. This guy has not learned that. Once he does, though, and I think he will, because he's been banged up and dealing with injuries. Once he does, this team will improve defensively. Not going to be this year. I'm thinking next year because it's a lot into footwork. And for centers and power forwards, I look at footwork a lot when I'm watching these games. This guy's so big, he's being able to do whatever he wants offensively. But on defense, why are we seeing the opposition beat him to the post? Get better positioning. I asked the same question about Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis, he's dominant. A dominant size player all over the floor, one of the biggest matchup nightmares out there. But then on the other side, the guy can grab as many rebounds as he wants, but we've attacked him with betting because we attacked Nikola Jokic. It's the same thing. It's where they place themselves and how much they commit defensively. Those players I just mentioned, the two big names right there with Jokic and Anthony Davis, they don't, in my opinion, they don't commit defensively. Jokic is starting to a little bit. He's starting to realize, we're going to advance. I need to shut down that post. Little healthier too. Aaron Gordon's been back, and he's ramping up his playing time. Michael Porter, good defender on the perimeter. They put Russell Westbrook, good defender on the perimeter. They put all that together. This team should be much better than they are defensively. That's their area of vulnerability. That's why I'm watching these games. That's why we do the damn watch-along Wednesdays. And I'm not yelling at anyone. I'm passionate about this stuff. I care. I care more than just someone that wants to give you picks and then move on with my day. This is my day. And this is what I love doing. And I care. And we care. And I'm not the only one, by the way, who cares, because now joining me is someone else who cares very much about basketball and has to deal with my annoying ass about basketball every single day when I'm calling them up and being like, when we're on the assignments together, oh, dude, what's your core? It's Armando Marsal, my therapist, my friend, my coworker, your buddy at fantasyguru.com. What's going on, Armando? How you doing?
What's up, Fensty? Happy to be on, man. I love it. I love how you get fired up. To me, this is awesome. This is what we feed off of, right? This is the energy we feed off. This is great. This is passion at its finest right there, ladies and gentlemen. Passion at its finest.
I messaged Armando last night. Armando and I like to get together to come up with our core, or at least see where we're at with the core. We had a 5-game slate last night. 4 of those games until very late with the Heat Blazers game because Tyler Hero was ruled out. Most of the day, 4 out of the 5 were double-digit spreads. Very scary situation. You got to think one of those games is going to be able to withstand that. Once Tyler Hero was ruled out, then all of a sudden Armando and I, who were on the phone, were like, okay, we might be able to get some sneaky value there. When it came to our core, we wanted to build around that Raptors Magic game. It fit the script, although very early on, it looked like the Magic were just going to run away with it. I was schwitzing, I was sweating. But then we needed a play because I'm not going to put all 4 of my core even in a 5-game slate from that same game. I want to protect us a little bit in case stuff goes bad. So Armando wanted to go to the Blazers and Denny Avdia, which most nights I would have been all on, sign, seal, deliver, we're good. Blazers are getting healthier now, and I'm noticing that the production is starting to tail off a little bit, and he wanted Avdia, which was a smart move. I was worried about that, and I said, maybe we go to a team like the Heat. We get one of these value guys because they're messing with their lineup, and if we went with Avdia, we would have had more points than either Jovic or Ware. And the reason I'm saying all this, I texted Armando and apologized to him about that last night. That's how much we care about these cores.
No, and well, listen, you were on Ware. You and I were talking about Ware, like that was a good value play. I told you my model was popping very highly on him. It was like he was actually the highest graded player on the slate, but there was the uncertainty. We talked about some uncertainty, with the minutes and whatnot is what the big concern. And you wanted to play it safe with the core. We that's what we said, especially on such a volatile slate. So, and Jovic, look, he returned value, right? He ended up being on the core. He returned value. He was cheap. He didn't hurt your lineup. He was pretty highly owned as well in some of the tournaments that I played in. So, I no regrets regarding the core 4 yesterday. It's going to happen, and it's that those kind of slates you have to. There's 2 things, right? Number one, you have to make a decision. Do you want to take that kind of risk? Like, do you want to be heavily invested this evening because there is a ton of blowout potential? 4 out of the 5 games had double-digit spreads, right? You mentioned that. I was listening to you talk now about the Memphis game, and it's a good point of attack for some of these players, but you have to strongly consider the fact that there's I think it's a 14-point spread, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I think it's 14, right? So you cannot have, that. It's a 12 now, but you cannot have that in the back of your head. You simply cannot. So sometimes it's really up to you if you want to take the risk, how much risk tolerance you have as a player and what kind of games you're playing, right? You don't want to take on too much risk in cash games. And I think that's very important to kind of distinguish what kind of games you're playing and the kind of risk you want to take.
So Armando asked me when we were on the phone together talking about our cores, because we both had one player in our core, happened to be the same guy, Wendell Carter, who in the first half was sleeping, the guy couldn't hit a shot. Everybody else is hitting shots for this team. He's not hitting shots, ended up making up for it, ended up catching up at the end of the day. But we're talking about the cores here, and we're being like, well, what do we do here with these spreads and all? And the best was when you asked me, well, are you thinking for this 5-gamer more of a cash core or a GPP? And I get this question a lot, and I'll say this. My cores that I make I really try to keep them neutral. If there's a player that I would consider GPP, but man, I really like him, I'm going to put him in the core. My cores tend to lean cash unless it's a 4 to 5 game slate like last night. Last night, we had to protect ourselves with the double-digit spreads. Most nights, though, 4 to 5 game slates, I'll be thinking with a more GPP mindset. Once it hits that 6er and all the way up, then my core is going to be a little bit more on the cash side, Armando, when you're on coverage, and especially for your cheat sheets that you have up at fantasyguru.com. What's your mindset regarding our core 4s?
It's very slate dependent for me. Like for me, there's going to be times where I will embrace some of the volatility on the slate because I think there's a perfect spot to take advantage of. If I look like through the ownership projections and I feel like there's someone that can really give us an edge that's going to be lower owned, knowing that that's a little bit risky because he is going to be a lower owned, I'm going to include those kind of plays in the core 4, but it's going to be very slate dependent. I think I looked at tonight's slate, kind of, started digging into it. It's a very fruitful center night, in my opinion. I think there are a lot of great options. I think this is where you're going to have to get creative and unique. Like, this is it. If you're playing on FanDuel, you got only one. If you play on DK, you're probably going to play it. Right now, I have 2 centers in my lineup. That's how I have my roster construction as things stand right now. It's just, picking and choosing the right guy, and maybe you get creative and get unique in this one because I do think that there's going to be some chalk at the center position this evening.
So let's start there. Let's talk about the center spot because Yeah, I mean, you've seen my big board already. My article will be up a little bit later in the day, but I like to send Armando my big board so he can see, especially for this and these exercises we do on this free show. Tell your friends, by the way, that this is a free show. And if you're saying to all of them, hey, I'm loving everything that they got going on the Elite Mafia at fantasyguru.com, well, show them this show that's on Monday through Friday, noon Eastern, and then you sign up after that. They'll want to sign up and have a lot of fun as well. So, Armando, here's the thing with centers, and I'll give away a little bit of the strategy here that I have going in. I mean, you've got a guy like on FanDuel, Sabonis, right, at 10K. Only qualifying on the FanDuel main slate. I have that noted in the article. I normally put them in red when it only qualifies the player on the one slate. But outside of that, man, it's a big value night when it comes to center because you could go with a Şengün, or you go all the way down and you go after the Mark Williams of the world who we've talked about, or you even go lower than that. And I'll give you a few of my value guys that I have. Jaylin Williams, who I think is going to be owned. If there could be 101% ownership, I feel like he would be that guy tonight. You could also look at Rudy Gobert, continues to be cheap. You're going to tell me he's going to be at less than 6K in a good game environment against what? A very crappy Dallas and banged up front court. Okay, yes, please, I'm there. So you've got those two guys. And you also have Jalen Duren as well, a guy who doesn't need 30 minutes to give you a double-double. He's in a good spot tonight, as well as the Pistons are going to be taking on Atlanta in what will be a fantastic pace-up spot for them. I mean, Armando, do we even consider the Sabonises of the world and the Şengüns of the world, because we've got, like you're saying, so much tasty value right there?
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to get up that high at the center position. I think where I'm capping it off is Mark Williams. It's very tough not to play him, in my opinion. I understand that the spread situation there, but in any game that he's played 29 minutes this season, he's eclipsed 40 DK points. Like, that's insane. That is an insane number. At 7K, you're getting 6X almost, right? Your aim is 5X. If he gives you 29, 30 minutes, I think you could easily get 5X here in this spot. So for me, he's someone that I'm looking at projection models right now as far as ownership, and he's expected to be upwards of 20%. But it's hard to fade him tonight. Like, for me, it's hard to fade. And he goes with a great balanced build, right? And we talk about this all the time. Like, I personally like going with a balanced approach. He fits my style. He fits this kind of, the way I like to build my rosters. You got Jalen Duren. You mentioned it. Like, we are seeing a nice ceiling out of him, right? At sub 6K, I think he's someone that you can look at for some salary relief. Okonkwo, I mean, I think he's another one. 5,600 on DraftKings makes a lot of sense here. You mentioned Williams. Jalen Williams, he's going to be very popular as well here. So you have a lot of guys that are sub 6K at the center position, and then you have Mark Williams, who's 7K on DK, 8K on FanDuel, which is, I don't want to say priced up. So you're getting really good point per dollar plays at this position in good matchups, in good game environments. It's very tough to pass up on something like that for a high price guy with a massive ceiling.
Because of what we've been facing these last few days, I feel like a lot of people are going to be if they see the double-digit spread, I'm out, that's it. But like Armando said, Mark Williams is the type of player that even in a blowout situation, okay, doesn't play 30 minutes, he plays 26, 27. We're used to that with him. We can expect it. He may not draw as much ownership tonight, but like Armando was saying, on DraftKings, where we could go with the multiple centers, that's a good combination. A Jalen Williams and a Mark Williams. The Williams combination could be excellent for our core tonight. And there's just so much value right there when it comes to center. It allows us to pay up at other positions. I'll tell you this, too. Another area where we might be able to go value tonight. Dude, I don't know what the hell I'm doing with small forward, because let's start with the New Orleans Pelicans, man. I feel like we're all kind of in purgatory every single day because you don't know if Zion's going to play or not. And it keeps the rest of our players in this matchup frozen out, because if he's in, he handles the rock. He's all over the court. He lowers everybody else's ceilings.
Yeah. His stat, there's a lot of teams like that, right? Where like one player that like the news of one player will depend on everyone else's production. Like that's what it's dependent on. It's a wait and see approach, right? With these kind of situations, this is one of my favorite games. Though the Bucks Pelicans game is one of my favorite games here tonight. I'm more bullish on the Bucks side though, like Fensty. Like I think I know we're going to talk about paying up.
Well, wait a second. Let me stop you right there. We just got a note, and Jason in our comments, by the way, about 20 minutes ago, and I'm trying to find out why the Bucks Pelicans game is officially postponed.
What?
I don't know why.
That is super strange.
Yeah, I mean, normally they give a reason here. Let's see if Shams Charania said anything about this here. Oh, whether Jason, you're the man. Thank you so much right here. Real time right here with the stream. Really appreciate you saying that. Apparently some weather issues going on. Yeah, snowstorm in New Orleans.
This is off top. It was actually snowing in Florida. It snowed in Florida.
Really?
Pensacola Beach. The sand was, I think it's Pensacola. I'll look at, it's Pensacola. It was covered. The beach, the sand was covered in snow.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So while we're on this slate, now what was a 7-game slate has now become a 6-game slate on DraftKings tonight. And you know what? I'm glad everybody's safe. I think the fact that we've had so many, look, the fires in LA, I get it. The Atlanta game being postponed because it's cold outside, Armando. Come on, what are we doing here right now? What are we doing here? Is that paying dues right there? Armando Marsal all about paying dues in the gym. It could be snowing. It could be a blizzard where he is in Florida. He's still hitting that gym up at least one time. These guys can't play basketball, Armando? Shame.
It's indoors. I mean, these football players are playing in below or freezing weather. I mean, it's below zero at times. Now, I guess now the attention is going to shift to that Detroit-Atlanta game, right? Like, that was my second game. That was my second favorite game on this slate. But then now here we go. Okay, so these are some situations you have to kind of talk about. Now you have 1, 2, 3 of the 6 games with a spread of at over 11 points. Okay, so and then one of those games that it doesn't have that spread. It's not that great of a gaming environment. That Minnesota Dallas game, I'm not really excited about that game from a game environment perspective. So now what does that do? You kind of start like eliminate, and you don't eliminate games, period, but you're going to have less exposure to a game. So again, we come to another night of basketball where you're going to have to embrace some type of volatility, Fensty.
Yes. By the way, also, and let's talk about that a little bit, Armando, because more news rolling in right here, and it's a great pivot point right here. It's like the news is paying attention to us here. One of those games that's very not appetizing is a 17-point spread between the Jazz and the Thunder. Okay, 17 points. Now we don't have as many games. We just got a game with big names in it and a decent environment, especially for the Pelicans, and a great matchup for the Bucks, chopped off. So now here's what we've got when it comes to the Jazz. The Jazz have been very hurt. Sensabaugh out, but apparently John Collins and Lauri Markkanen are going to play in this game tonight. So I got to ask you this, man. 17-point spread. They've been messing with Colin Sexton. I don't know if they just want to preserve him and they're planning on shipping him out before the deadline in the next few weeks. But it's been bizarre how they've been working with Sexton. So this is my warning sign to all of you saying don't be surprised. And if 4 hours from now, he's all of a sudden questionable, they've been messing with him. But if he does play, Armando, a guy like Isaiah Collier, who has been excellent, man. We've hit bets with him. I hit a bet with him the other night. Now you've got more of these guys back, though, so they can rely on their forwards. Is he still, even in a 17-point spread, is this a value play that not as a core play, but one that you would consider now? Because the Jazz are healthier. Sexton plays, it pushes them down the trough. If they're getting their ass kicked, then it's going to be the entire Jazz bench, and that's where Collier could see more minutes in garbage time.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of like, so how many minutes are you projecting him for? Like he's been playing, like he played 37, 35, 26, 37, 27. I think we see him more in that 24 to 26 range tonight.
Okay.
Right? Do you think Collier is going to play more than that?
Thinking that this might be a blowout, I think he's going to play a little bit more than that. I think we could go 27 to, again, with the thought process that even with their centers banged up, and Jalen Williams is questionable. Just saw a note that he went through practice, though, which is generally a good sign. You got to think this is going to be a double-digit game unless the Thunder aren't hitting any of their shots. That's why I would say tonight, thinking Sexton's going to play, he's in for 27 to 32 minutes.
If he gets that 30 minutes, I think at his price point, we could definitely give him a go, right? Like I think you could give him a go. 5,300 on DraftKings. So you're looking at 0.8 fantasy points per minute. Talking right about that 24 to 25 point. If he's producing at his average, I mean, there's going to be times he exceeds that expectation, and there's going to be times he does not get there. But yeah, I think at 5,300 you could still make a case for him, especially if you think he's going to play in that 30-minute mark here. I agree with you with Sexton though. Like, so in this situation, like this is a good example right here of you have to now start letting the price adjust, right? The pricing of these players, because they've been inflated because of the injuries. They've been inflated because of the current usage, because of the current minutes, because of the current role. You now have to kind of take a back seat and not overpay, because now you're paying premium dollar for a player who's not going to get the same usage, that have the same role that he was getting in those games where his price started going up. So I generally tend to step back and kind of wait it out, let those price adjust, and let everything get back to, let the dust settle, I guess is the way to say it, and then start investing in these teams again. In this kind of situation, I agree with you. I think you're going to take that big spread and say, maybe I will go with someone like Collier, who we've seen be productive when the opportunities have come. I still think he's going to get the opportunities because of the blowout. So this is where I'm going to get my exposure in this game. But you just have to understand what you're doing. Like the thought process is, you just have to understand that if this game does stay close, he's not going to get those 30 minutes.
That's true. I mean, so let me ask you this then. Major players from this game. It's going to be a nice, fast-paced environment. 17-point spread. SGA, Collins, Markkanen, Jalen Williams. Are we out on all of these guys? Because in one thought, yes, the Thunder should be up big. In another thought, it's a great game environment, and if they are up big, it's probably because SGA is being the MVP that he's been this year.
I'm not going to talk anyone off of SGA. Like, I cannot endorse him as you must play him. I love the match, like the match, everything lines, like everything checks off, right? Like the matchup, the everything, the pace,
except the spread,
And then you have Cunningham in the same range against Atlanta, a defense that's giving up top 5 production to the point guard position. Like, for me, it's hard to justify it. I understand SGA is SGA, but in the specific slate, it's hard for me to justify, putting so much of your salary down on the player that might not get his full minutes. So, like, I'm looking at it now. SGA played 30 minutes the last time he played Utah. He scored 51 DK points in those 30 minutes, right? So this is my thing. Like, how many minutes do you think SGA gets here? Like 30? So that's so there you go. You're looking at a potential 50 point game. Last time Cunningham played Atlanta, he triple-doubled. Like, and I feel like that game, like that's one of those close games. And I'm not saying we're projecting or predicting overtime, but if there's a game that you could bet that's going to land in overtime, this is one of those games you say, okay, it could land in overtime. I'm not saying it will, but it could. So it's difficult for me to justify that on this specific slate.
How do you deal with back-to-backs? Do they impact you at all when it comes to players? And I'm talking about back-to-backs where the player played, let's say, 38, 39 minutes, maybe even 35 minutes in a close game, possible overtime. Not one crappy game where starters got pulled and they just played 25 minutes or so.
It's really dependent on the player. I actually look at those numbers. Like, if I'm torn between the player, I'll go and I'll look at the statistics. Like, on a back-to-back, I kind of put the model to look at everything. I'll look at back-to-back on the road or back-to-back away. Like, I do all that stuff and I see how the production is throughout the entirety of the career of these players. So when I look at it, if it's someone that struggles, I generally stay away. But again, it's always going to be very situational and very dependent on the player for me.
When I'm looking at, and this is something Armando kind of referenced a little bit, and that's something we should consider. If you're looking to pay up for a high-priced player that's on a road trip, if they're at the end of that road trip, let's say it's a 4 or 5 game road trip, I'd be careful unless the matchup is going to be very close, but I'd be very careful with that because the fatigue when they're on the road does come into that towards some of these stars. I don't read into that a lot, but if I'm seeing a player that we're paying up for teeter on the 5x return, now games 3 and 4 into the road trip, now we're at game 5, it's going to turn me off to that player.
Yeah, I agree because they get burned. We have to understand they're human, right? Like they get burned out too. Like they get tired. I know this is their profession, but they get tired. And it's different time zones for a lot of these guys. Some of these teams are East Coast teams, like on the West Coast, and it takes time to adjust to that time change things. Like so, I think you have to take that into perspective as well when you're thinking about these players on road trips.
So then let's talk about the high price point guards for a second. Because we could go value in other areas. Small forward's going to be a big value spot. Center, big value spot tonight. If you're looking, knowing everything we know right now, LaMelo Ball, SGA, Cade Cunningham. Ball in a very nice spot, but in a double-digit spread. You were just talking about Cade Cunningham here and how that game should be closer. SGA, blowout risk there. Who are you prioritizing between the three?
It's gonna be Cunningham, and Ball is a very close second. I think I don't want to say Memphis can keep it within range, but I think they could keep it within a distance where they get enough minutes tonight. I'll say this. I don't think it's gonna be a double digit game going into the fourth quarter. I think it could be like an 8-9 point game. I think it could be within range. Like that's what I'm saying. And even if it's a 12-point game, I don't think that they're going to wave the white flag, right? Like,
interesting. You're saying that because with Brandon Miller out, this is a place. And if you're telling me it's going to be an 8-9 point game, I'm starting to think that we could get some value out of this specific game. And one of those spots. And this is going to be a guy who's very high owned, punt play price. But if he's going to get the minutes, Armando, in a great spot, I don't care if he's 90% ownership. You guys can complain to me in Discord all freaking night. How don't we have Nick Smith as a core? How don't we?
Yeah, I have him as one of the top, like as far as point per dollar play on the slate. So I have him. You're looking at he could return about almost 7x basically is what you're basically looking at. He's 3,200 on DraftKings. You could easily pencil him in for 28 minutes. I think that's a floor. 27, 28 minutes. Do you see that as well? Yep. Like, do you think that as well? So I'm gonna lock him into a core play myself. I think that So this is the thing. I think he is a great way to get exposure. And then Williams, right? He and Williams are a great way to get exposure to his team without having to overinvest in Ball. And you could still go to Cunningham, right? And then that's kind of like the thought process there. I do like Ball. I do think he's going to play minutes here. But even if this game blows out, I think Smith is safe. Like, I think he's a safe plug and play, just like Williams is. So for me, they're the safest play. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. He's going to be in my core. And I'm not quite sure if Williams is going to be there yet, but I'll tell you this, like Williams is 100% going to be in my lineup this evening.
Yeah, he's been great. And that price is going to go up on DraftKings to 8K in about 5 days from now. And then we're going to be in wait and see mode after that.
Exactly.
And that's great. But you got to think of these players like, not you, Armando, you clearly do, everybody else, like the stock market, right? Everybody now, you're going to be seeing Mark Williams all over the internet on the cover of soon enough, you're going to be seeing him on the cover of playbooks. You view those as the Wall Street Journal. If that player is hitting my cover, Armando's cover, then everybody knows about it. Ownership's going to be high. And when I'm paying 8K for a center in a medium matchup, medium pace, Charlotte runs slow, they're facing a team that's paced 16-30, that's a spot where maybe we start to lay off. But right now in FanDuel, he is 8K. But for tonight's exercise, pace up spot, very safe, doesn't need a lot of minutes there, not a lot. I mean, Jaren Jackson Jr. is good, but I feel like Memphis doesn't have, I don't want to say a lot of size depth, but they don't have a lot of mature skill depth. I think the way they're playing Zach Edey is stupid. they're stupid for doing so. Give this guy 30 freaking minutes. Let him show his range a little bit. Let him be a good compliment, but that's not what they're doing. They're slow playing him. Santi Aldama is another guy where he'll get his minutes, but he's in, he's out, you never know. So Memphis doesn't have a lot of that skill in the post, Armando. So that's why even at 8K on FanDuel, 7K on DraftKings, Mark Williams is good for me.
Yeah, I agree. And now that we're having this conversation, I think it's also smart to maybe say, if we do think this game is going to be a little bit closer, who do you like to run it back? Like, who's standing out to you as a potential run back? Is it Jaren Jackson? Is it Desmond Bane? Like, or is it one of those, players that you mentioned just now? I don't think so. I think it'll be Bane for me if I do run it back with anyone. That's kind of the one I'm looking at here. Given the price point, 7,600 on DK, I think it's very affordable. And then he also gives you that flexibility, right? Like, he gives you that the guard flexibility. He's, if I'm not mistaken, give me a second. I also think he's small forward eligible.
He's just a shooting guard eligible player on draft.
Okay. So he just gives you that guard shooting guard. He used to be small forward. So I think Bane is a good run back option. So if you're going to go into this evening with the idea of it should stay within range, right? Like I do, I think it should stay within range where they're going to get enough minutes. Okay. If you do that, I think running it back, this game has the highest spread or the highest total on the entire slate, 240.5. So you definitely want to be invested in if you think it's going to stay close.
Yes. And by the way, with talking about and going back to talking about some of these other games with the Charlotte side, you need even more proof from Nick Smith than he's 3,200. Memphis has been bleeding points to midcourts. When I say midcourts, by the way, everyone, shooting guard, small forwards. I sometimes call them midcourts. I sometimes call them wings if I'm specifically talking about the forwards. They are letting up the scoring, though. And that's why we like some of these Charlotte options. This is a good opportunity to stack. Memphis is a good defensive team, Armando. I have to give them their flowers. But I'm more focused on the game environment and the fact that the Hornets have been, despite their injuries that they've been dealing with all year, they've kept their last couple of games close.
They have, and they have talent. I know they're missing. Obviously, Miller's a big piece for them, but they still have talent on this roster, right? And I again, Ball's good. he's a superstar in this league. So I think when you have a superstar like that, I think you can make things happen. So I like this game. And like you mentioned, that you're focusing on two things here, right? The game environment and then the pricing. I think that's important. You cannot ignore the pricing. Like you mentioned, it's like the stock market. And right now, some of these players are screaming, buy. You mentioned Williams is 8K on FanDuel. You get an extra $10,000 on FanDuel. So that's equivalent essentially to about 7K on DK. So you're still getting a discount. So keep that in mind. You're still getting a relatively, he's eventually going to be 9K on FanDuel. And then that's when you're going to say, all right, I'm out. Like, or maybe I got to think twice about this depending on the matchup, et cetera, et cetera. But right now you're still looking at these guys as buys. So yeah, I think this is going to be a decent game environment here. I like it. I think I'm going to be invested in. And right now I've been messing around with my roster as you and I have been speaking, and Bane is in there right now. So I really do like that.
How do you feel about the Suns options tonight and the higher priced options? Because they're facing the Nets, who played last night, and it's a double-digit spread in that game. And with what the Nets are doing, they're pretty much gutting the team. It's going to be hard for them to keep up with Phoenix's offense. Is there anyone from the Suns, and I include Nick Richards when I say that, who really let us down last game? Because I'm a little bit worried because of their health issues they've been facing, that they'll take any excuse that they can get to pull Durant, pull Booker, keep Beal out. And even Nick Richards, they'll limit his minutes too. How worried are you about the Suns being up big?
Yeah, I'm very worried here. And as far as specifically Nick Richards, it's just too good of a position, right, for me to be considering him. And that's my issue there. No one really stands out to me. I will say, if you're looking for value, Tyus Jones, like you could pencil him in for 28 minutes. But again, it really not a game that is very appealing to me, right? I do think this one doesn't stay close. I agree with you. I think the Nets are kind of just, we're done. So I don't think they're going to keep it close here whatsoever. So I am concerned. I wouldn't want to pay up for, anyone from the Suns. just because if they don't get their regular allotment of minutes, I don't know if they're going to hit ceilings. And you're looking for ceilings at the end of the day when you're paying up for some of these guys. So if you're going to invest Tyus Jones, but again, that's just like a value option if you're looking to get a little bit different with your value options.
I've got one option from this game.
Who?
And D'Angelo Russell. He made comments last night that were, I'm loving the Nets offense. I've never had the freedom to do whatever I want. You see that kind of comment, and it screams green light. He can shoot the ball whenever he damn well pleases. If it's not Cam Johnson, it's going to be D'Angelo Russell. Now, I like him better in games where there's no Ben Simmons, and Ben Simmons was out last night, so he's assuming he's going to be playing tonight. But if you're looking to be different, the one player of intrigue, and I fully believe it. Sometimes with these players speak, they're full of crap. Most of the time they are. This is not that situation. This team is gutted. They don't have shooters on their team. D'Angelo Russell is going to be able to have the eternal green light. And I don't know if, Armando, I'm doing us in because it's not like he's a 4K player. You're still paying, $6K for him at the end of the day. But maybe because of the fear of the blowout, the Nets playing last night, all we talked about, maybe there's hardly any ownership on him. And if you're giving this guy the eternal green light on a gutted team, we got to take advantage of that.
Yeah, I don't expect a ton of ownership for him tonight. You look at, like you said, back-to-back Ben Simmons being potentially back. He had an illness, so I wouldn't be surprised if he does play tonight. And then the potential blowout. So I don't think his price is all that high though. At 6,200, we saw that last night what he's capable of doing. He could easily 7x that, 8x that, on a good night. And he took 17 shots last night. I think he could take upwards of 15 shots here tonight again. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a good way to get different. Just monitor news, because if Simmons is out, I do think a lot of people will kind of gravitate towards Russell because of the recency bias of last night's production without Simmons on there. So I do think you need to keep an eye on news before making that decision.
Any other players that, as we're getting ready to do our content for the day and be in Discord tonight, a 7:30 p.m. Eastern start time once again, just like last night. Very unusual for a Wednesday, but we get a little bit of extra time there to help everyone build before watch along Wednesday. Armando, any other players that you want to bring up that you're going to be laser focused on tonight?
We talked about Jalen Duren. We talked about Mark Williams. For me, it's really making the decision if I'm going to want to get all the way to Cunningham or not. Like, that's kind of the big decision I'm going to be making here tonight. I've got to find. We obviously have to find a little bit of value in order to fit that. We have that with Smith Jr. Lou Dort. I want to bring his name up because in these kind of games, right? Like, I feel like at his price point, his minutes are pretty secure. And he could rack up some defensive stats, right? Like he could get you some steals. He could do some of that. And he could also do some scoring, right? In a little bit of a pace up situation. So I think he's a low owned value guy that you can kind of look towards to get exposure to that game, right? And not be overly invested in anyone and pay a high dollar in anyone. I just think, he's safe for 30 minutes. He's sub 5K, good matchup. In these specific matchups, I'm usually kind of, for whatever reason, I gravitate towards him. And I think he can easily give you 5x. So that's the one guy that I think will be low owned, and you can get exposure to that game, with a decent total there.
Jazz have been surrendering a lot of scoring and also rebounding. My one thing I got to ask you about, though, do you think that he sees a lot of Markkanen tonight? Because if that's the case, dude's not going to be able to get a high percentage shot. That's my one thing with the big forwards being back. I just wonder if that's going to impact a guy like Dort tonight.
I do think it'll impact him. I'm not overly excited about his scoring. Like, I wouldn't bet his scoring prop or anything like that. But I think he'll do just enough, on all the other, in the peripherals, like, the steals, the defensive stats. I think he'll get some rebounds here. I think he'll get enough done at his price point in this game. And I do think he's going to get some good shots. I'm not saying he's going to get a ton, but I do think he'll eventually get some good shots in this game. And again, I like the secure minutes for him.
And who knows, man? I mean, look, the Thunder centers are out. Jalen Williams should be playing. He went through shoot around, so he should be playing, but they don't have a ton of size outside of Jalen Williams, really. So you know what? Maybe with the Jazz forwards back, the Jazz can keep this competitive for 3 quarters. And when I say competitive, I mean inside 20 points before they empty the benches. Maybe there's a chance because of that, because they're used to, by the way, the Thunder now prepping for the Jazz being what they've been probably recently. But now you've got a lot of your meat back in the middle. So, and that's skilled offensively too. It's not just Walker Kessler anymore. So maybe the Jazz, if they're shooting well, can at least keep this a game heading to the fourth quarter.
Yeah, you're hoping for that, right? Like you're hoping that they can. This is the one game I don't know. I don't know if the Jazz could do it. But the thing is, you see this, right? Like all the time, like you'll see these big spreads, and then you look in the fourth quarter, it's like a 5-point game. You're like, what? So it can happen. This is the game though I'm least confident in that will stay within range. Like that.
The other night I went after Toronto Boston, and I didn't want to go after Toronto Boston. I'm like, come on, it's Boston. Toronto's not going to be able to keep up, and it was Toronto that was blowing out Boston.
I know. I hate when that happens because you're just like, oh my God, this was a great opportunity that was missed, you know? But yeah, it's tough on a smaller slate, like the one tonight. Like, I think you're going to have to take chances. I do think it's a good game environment when you're looking at the pace for this game here. But I don't want to be over invested in anyone in particular. I don't want to pay up here in this game just because I do have that concern about the blowout.
Got a lot of content coming up. I got my article coming out for the write-up for now on DraftKings, the 6-game slate. As you see, Bucks Pelicans postponed because of the snow, and that will make it an 8-game slate on FanDuel, 6 games on DraftKings. Armando Marsal joining me. You see him all over fantasyguru.com, multi-sport analyst. Armando, what's coming up with you on the site?
Yep, the cheat sheet will be up shortly there on the site, and then we got the Armando Marsal podcast going live on Friday, as well as the DFS breakdown for the 2-game NFL slate we got this week, and that'll be up on Friday. And the staff picks for the divisional round will be up by tomorrow, so make sure you keep an eye out for those there. And you can find, of course, all of my work over at fantasyguru.com.
I'll have some bets up a little bit later on, and then after the slate locks at 7:30 p.m. Eastern, it is Watch Along Wednesday. I'll be in the DFS NBA Discord from 7:30 p.m. Eastern until around 9:30 p.m. Eastern. I'd say a couple of hours in there. Although I'll say this, if we're popping in there and I'm seeing a lot of conversation, I will stay. It's like almost putting a quarter in to ride the ride for another ride, Armando. If they're staying in there, if it's not just a ghost town in there by the time it hits that 9:30 p.m. Eastern, then you know what? I'll stay in there for a little bonus time there. But it's very important that you learn all about our processes. And Armando, it's been fun these last few weeks talking basketball with you on this stream. We'll do it again next week, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, man. I'm loving it. Thank you so much for having me on the show, man. It's always a blast talking basketball with you. I talked to you about this on the phone. We talk on the phone. We're in touch. It's just not here that we're talking basketball. So for me, this is awesome. I enjoy it. And looking forward to doing this every week with you, bro.
Yeah, Armando also will have football coverage with you, multiple episodes per week, the Mind of Marsal podcast. Also on the Elite Plus Network, you've got One Man's Opinion. You've got Fantasy Sports Daily, which we put up as a podcast. You've got Mind of Marsal Fensty's Basketball Diaries. All you got to do, fantasyguru.com, click the Elite Plus tab, and it will bring you right to all of those shows, and we are here for you. For Armando Marsal, I'm Justin Fensterman. Thank you all for hanging out. Ray Flowers back with you tomorrow, noon Eastern, same time, same stream, same Elite Mafia family right here on the Elite Plus Network, powered by fantasyguru.com.